Hope you're, if not, I hope this show can change that. Let me give you the lowdown on this show. It's a live weekly class, happens every Thursday, 7 to 8 p.m. UK time. That's GMT plus one. I want you to ask your questions. Don't be shy of upsetting me. The first half hour will be about health this week. Please ask me questions about that. In the second half hour, you can ask me anything you want. The happiness teachings I give are based on Islam because Islam is unique in a couple of ways. It is the only religion that says you can go to heaven even if you're not Muslim. So in that way, it is the most inclusive religion. It is also the only religion that encourages you to be logical and is entirely logical. It is the only religion that's not uh, not only is it in line with science, but has many times shown to be ahead of science by predicting things that are later shown to be true by science, and actually continues to predict things like existence of aliens. Um, all my classes have a summary that you can read ahead of the class, so you can read and think up your questions before the show, and I leave them there so you can read them anytime after the show, whenever you want. Everything, my past shows, the text summaries, these summaries I'm talking about that you can read before the class, loads more free material and videos are all at bigquestionsanswered.com. Now, I was supposed to have clicked that, and that's that. So I've got extra time to summarize things. So let me spend some extra time. There's always something going wrong. There's always something going wrong. I thought I did that intro really well, but then I forgot to do the timer. So let's get on with the next thing. And the next thing is the actual class. So today we're talking about health, and the first thing is mental health. Your conscience knows the way is the title for the first of 7 parts. I'm going to explain. Basically, I'll quote from Prophet Muhammad to begin with. Prophet Muhammad said, "Anything which brings you peace of mind and contentment of heart is good. Anything which disturbs the mind and troubles the heart is sinful, even though it may be held lawful by jurists, so by the law. So don't worry about what the law says. Listen to your conscience. It knows the way. Few people do that. That's the key thing there. As that Prophet Muhammad is saying. The real strength of Islam. So, how does this relate to health? I'm going to explain now. And by the way, in a minute or in 21 seconds, it's going to say that I'm talking about, let me see if I'm pointing the right way, the other way. It's going to say that I'm talking about mental health, and it'll give you kind of a summary of what I'm saying. Anyway, the real strength of Islam is to set you on a path that avoids health problems in the first place, starting from getting you into, so it's about to change. Come on, you can change. There we go. Health, mental health. Your conscience is the way. So, the real strength of Islam is to set you on a path that avoids health problems, starting from getting you into a positive environment, a positive mindset, and easy ways to keep you that way. This is the best way to keep you healthy. The tip above, mentioned by Prophet Muhammad, is a quick mental check that we are all able to follow to stay on the straight path of contentment without deviating into destructive habits. When you feel content, you do not struggle and stress. The connection between how you feel inside is the most important thing that affects our health. When you are unhappy, you quickly get into a self-destructive cycle. Even if you pretend to cry, it produces sad feelings. So this is the soul body happiness connection. For an in-depth logical discussion on this topic regarding the soul, read The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam, chapter the third source, Nafsir Mutmainna, the soul at rest. That's from my summary I've just read out, but I've got a minute and a half, so let me explain that in a bit more detail. So, Prophet Muhammad said, uh, peace of mind is if you're looking for peace of mind, that can be got just by judging every situation that come across on a case by case situation. So you have a conscience that God himself controls. So if you listen to that, you will be God. I mean, you will be good. You will be godly as well. The Quran talks about the soul, the self, um, the telling off soul. So everybody has this thing inside them uh, that says if you're doing something wrong or if you're doing something right, that's just basically your conscience. And if you listen to that on every single situation, you will know which way to go, and that way you will avoid all sorts of suffering. We get into suffering by putting ourselves in bad situations, making bad choices, but we just jump into them almost blindly, not listening to our conscience. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says, anything that brings you contentment of heart is good. So even if you possibly make the wrong decision, go back on it if you know that it's making you upset. And anything that anything that gives you contentment, follow it. Anything that is sinful, go the other way. Trust me, or you can try it. Don't trust me, and you'll see that it works, and you'll find that your life just becomes so much more simple. And that's a really good way. Prevention is better than cure, as it were. Um, so here we go. Fasting. Fasting can save you in lots of ways. God says in the Holy Quran, so I'm always quoting from the Quran. Sometimes I quote from different religions because they all come from the same source. God says in the Holy Quran, the prescribed fasting is for a fixed number of days, except those who, in short, I'm summarizing, are sick on a journey or in or or find it difficult. They should give charity basically, and fasting is good for you if you only knew. So that's just chapter 2, verse 185. If you want references for any of the things I'm saying, um, go to the text summary on bigquestionsanswered.com, and you'll see links to the references. Um, yeah, and please do ask questions at any point in time. So ask questions any point. I'm looking at the chat. If you've got questions, that's great. If you don't worry, and hopefully enjoy the show. Fasting has been shown to make you smarter, help against cancer, detox your body, build your immune system, and of course lose fat. It also calms you down, and so you think better. In Islam, it is done as a community in the month of Ramadan, so it's fun and therefore much easier than doing it by yourself. It has also been shown that it takes about a month to develop a habit. So by the end of this month of Ramadan, you would have fixed your binding. Okay, reading my text summary, it doesn't make sense. Um, Fixed your habits. Or, oh, you're binging. That's what I meant. Binging. Okay. The I over rely on, what's it called? Whatever. Word spell check, that's it. But fasting is not primarily about getting fit, it is about spirituality where happiness lies. Fasting helps you slow down and work on your inner self so that you make healthier and happier choice future choices. Fasting is not limited to Ramadan. Once you feel how easy and healthy fasting is, you may want to fast every week. So there's more to it than that. But basically, fasting, and I'm going to talk a bit about it a bit more, is in this section on COVID at the end of it, hopefully, is really gonna help you in COVID and so many other situations. You should YouTube it to find out more. But anyway, COVID proper lockdowns work. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, if you hear of the plague in the plague is just a way of saying a contagious disease. If you hear of the plague in one region, keep away from it. And should it break out in the region where you are, do not depart from it. We have prolonged, so I'll explain now. You can say basically see that Prophet Muhammad, or hear that Prophet Muhammad is saying that have a lockdown. Don't go into areas where the disease is, and if you already have the disease in your area, don't leave it. So we have prolonged the pandemic by not following the advice given above, which has worked in so many countries. So you can see places like in New Zealand, and even like in the UK, we're really suffering from the pandemic, but we've got an island called the Isle of Man, which did a strict lockdown and has no problems. Prophet Muhammad was saying have strict lockdowns. The vaccine cannot be a permanent protection against an unstable virus like COVID-19 and all its strains. If we had an effective track and trace system, we could have limited the lockdown areas so you don't have to lock down the whole country. This virus cannot last longer than 2 weeks. If you don't let it spread from an area, it will die, which is what happens if you follow the advice of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The other advice Prophet Muhammad said about not eating too much and even fasting is the next most powerful measure against COVID 19, as it is overweight people. So there's a link to information. Overweight people, as well as diseases developed by overeating, that make us suffer most from COVID 19. This is more effective than taking a vaccine. As I explained, a vaccine really only works with stable viruses, not things that keep mutating. Have some benefit, but the key thing is your health, and there's lots of evidence to explain that. Look, simple thing is there are children, only I think 12 children without comorbidities have died from coronavirus out of 120 something thousand who have died in total. Like adults who have died, so you can tell that it's your immune system that does the work, and that's what you should focus on. Diet, don't eat toxic meat like pork. So if you're really into being healthy, more and more people are realizing pork is actually really bad for you. So that's a quick intro, but let me read a verse of the Holy Quran that talks about unhealthy food. God says in the Holy Quran, He has made unlawful for you only that which dies of itself, and blood and dies of itself, and blood and the flesh of swine, and that of which the name of any other than Allah, that is God, has been invoked. But he who is driven by necessity, being neither disobedient nor exceeding the limit, then surely Allah is the most forgiving, merciful. So don't pick up dead roadkill or something and eat that. That's definitely going to be bad for you. Don't drink blood. Don't don't eat pigs, the swine, and there are some other things. But if you are starving, then you can eat it. Of course, you can eat donkeys, whatever you want, but otherwise it's forbidden. It's not good for you. God just tells you what's good for you and what's not good for you, and up to you if you listen to it. So let me quickly explain from the summary here. God knows And more recently, we have found out, to some extent, what is healthy to eat. For example, Islam teaches that animals should be slaughtered in a way that removes poisons from the animal and causes least suffering to it. This is known as halal. Chickens in the UK are gassed to death, so bacteria can grow in them until properly bled. Islam teaches animals should be slaughtered with a sharp knife through the main vein in the neck to allow animals to be bled immediately and also drain the blood drain the brain of blood so that the animal stops feeling anything. Animals should also be treated with kindness. This is called tayyib. This is necessary for eating anything we eat. Islam also teaches us that what is healthy to consume. For example, predators and pigs are unhealthy. Pigs have a short digestive system, so their flesh contains unprocessed toxins that are harmful for us to eat. So there's a bit more that I could have read, but I'll leave it. The next thing, please ask your questions. Don't feel shy. Feel could do, if you know what, maybe it's hard to ask your questions straight away. And maybe you haven't read these summaries that I've produced ahead of time. So just ask your questions in the non-live comments if you're not watching this live, or if you come up with questions afterwards. I'm always checking out any questions that are coming along. I get notifications. So alcohol. Islam makes socializing easy, so you don't need alcohol. God says in the Holy Quran, they asked thee concerning wine and the game of hazard, that is, gambling. Say, in both there is great sin, that is, things that really make you do bad things, and also some advantages for men, that I should say people, and men is an old translation. Uh, but their sin is greater than their advantage. So basically, what God is saying here is that there is a lot of bad stuff that happens when you drink alcohol and gamble. So I'm focusing on alcohol at the moment, and we know that now. That's why there's so many, uh, you know, um, cautionary notices on adverts relating to alcohol and gambling nowadays. We finally figured out there's a problem with it. And Islam, well, let me just quickly read the summary, which is probably going to be more succinct than I am right now. Islam is the only religion to ban drinking alcohol, even though it is considered the most destructive drug in society. It is a gateway drug to harder drugs like cocaine. One third of emergency patients in hospitals in the UK are alcohol related. Alcohol the one is one of let's get rid of the extra the alcohol is one of the main reasons for sexual abuse of children as well as domestic violence. After all that, Islam is open to the fact that there are benefits to drinking alcohol, but says the damage it causes is far worse. Islam does not just ban alcohol, but it first makes it so that we do not depend on it. In the West, people use it to relax in social situations. Islam brings us closer together as brothers and sisters in society so that there is no need for such a social crutch as alcohol, as then as there is when we do not have genuine relationships with each other. So I just summarize, Islam brings us closer together in 101 ways, like bringing us together every Friday so we talk to each other socially, close links in society. Like I know all the Muslims in like all the my kind of Muslims are revolutionary happiness type. I have all their phone numbers and things like that. And we're always in communication, so there's no need for alcohol anymore. And of course, alcohol is super destructive, as I just mentioned. Let's get on to the next bit. Number six, loneliness. Families are good for your health. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, He who desires to enlarge his means, that is, increase the way or amount of money he makes, or to lengthen his days, basically live longer, should strengthen his ties of kinship, that is, keep good relationships with your family. So that's the end of the quote, basically. If your family is not confused by materialism, they naturally want you to succeed. So their spread of personalities and skills can make your family, your whole family, successful. You are stronger together. This is why Prophet Muhammad says that family can increase the ways of creating wealth for you. This also means that you are less stressed about surviving, which will then improve your health. The biggest killer in the West is loneliness. We are all social beings, so when we do not have genuine relationships with people, loneliness creates all sorts of physical side effects such as stress, worthlessness, obesity, diabetes, and more. Most of us have families but do not realize how important they are. This is the result of being in a materialistic society where we automatically adopt a culture of valuing things over people. Prophet Muhammad reminds us in the quote mentioned that family are important for our relationships, which keeps us living longer. And just to add a bit more detail, so that's just all my summaries are very much like the bare minimum explanation. um, if you look into, if you YouTube the people who live the longest, centenarians, okay, so search something like TED Talks. TED Talks are like these really intellectual but really well presented talks to just the layperson. TED Talks centenarians or something, or just blue zones, TED Talks blue zones, and you'll find out that people who live the longest live with their extended family, including the older generations and things like that. So there are many benefits of living with your elder generation, but we think talked about it a little bit before. Number 7, fun. If you are lucky, no, you are lucky if you are having troubling reading my own notes. Eh? You are lucky if you are healthy. Enjoy it. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, there are two blessings of which people do not take full advantage: health and leisure. If we are obsessed with chasing something we do not have, then we never appreciate what we already have, which includes our health. If we keep ourselves too busy, we never have time for fun either. This attitude will inevitably make us tired, stressed, and lonely. Human beings have the longest childhood of all animal species. Childhood is a time for creativity, which makes us more powerful than other creatures. So, fun is very important for success as well. The most creative people keep the fun and wonder of our childhood alive. See TED Talk Tales of Creativity and Play to stay creative. So there's a link in my summary that shows you or demonstrates from some of the most successful one of the most successful creative companies in the world, IDEO, I think it was called, of how they mimic childhood behavior. So, like children make believe and pretend they're doctors and things like that. They actually do things like that to stay creative and actually just make sure they have fun. They literally find people they would love to be friends with at work, and they have slides at work. Google's famous for that kind of stuff. um, what was it? Um, Hopefully they have the keys downstairs. Anyway, um, so yeah, so there's Pixar who have little huts to work in. I think I might have to answer it all. Okay. Give me a minute. They know I do this show every week, won't it? Ah, there is somebody in this. Anyway, um, I'm going to go on to the open question answers. You can ask me any questions you want. If you don't have questions, oh, I'm supposed to do a summary. I forgot about this. So my friend Salim suggested that I do a summary of everything I've just said, like a recap. Okay, so we talked about mental health. That's the key. Prevention is better than cure. And I talked about how Islam teaches you all sorts of little tricks to keep you from getting into unhealthy habits in the first place. So the tip I suggested, but there are many more, are listen to your conscience because it knows the way. So if you're doing something and it doesn't give you peace of mind, move away from it. Then there's fasting. I listed so many benefits very quickly, and they might even seem unbelievable, like it makes you smarter, but actually, it does have an effect on the veins or something in your brain, and it's amazing. Just Google it to check it out. So it's amazing how many benefits it has. But one of the key benefits in our days today is to help you against COVID. COVID is unfortunately, maybe because it doesn't make any money, there's not much emphasis on staying healthy and especially losing weight. I think they should, instead of having endless, you know, drives to get more people to have vaccines, about having actual natural, developing natural immunities already been shown like to be 13 times stronger. And 13 times stronger is, I think, is an underestimate to how important being healthy and slim is. So fasting incredibly important in our days. COVID, I talked about COVID. It makes, I've already kind of mentioned COVID through fasting, and but there I made a separate point on COVID that we don't actually need to suffer for so long. We could have finished this pandemic such a long time ago. COVID-19 is just a disease, right? If I was being technically correct, I think it's called COVID SARS-2 or something. Who cares, right? There's so many strains of it, basically. And so, Chase doing this funny thing about vaccines where you have an unstable virus which keeps mutating. How is that ever going to be a solution? And it's questionable in many ways if it how effective it is in the first place. But and please, tell me if you think I'm wrong. Give me your counter, arguments or anything. Um, and by the way, I'm not like pro this or pro that. Like, yeah, sure, like people in my family are taking the vaccine. I'm not against them. So great, especially if you're in a at risk kind of category, take all the precautions and whatever. But anyway, but I said, especially for COVID, lockdowns, strict lockdowns, not pretend lockdowns where everybody's just going to each other's houses. That's not going to work. You can't have a lockdown in theory. Why would a lockdown in theory work? But places where they actually followed the law, had strict lockdowns, coronavirus died because it's just a living thing. It just can't live forever. It's not magical. Anyway, so that's what Prophet Muhammad also taught, that have strict lockdowns. And if you have a track and trace system where anybody who's got it use an app and they notify each other, then you can make smaller bubbles, as it were, using common modern terminology, and you wouldn't even have to shut down the whole country. And even if you did shut down the whole country, it wouldn't take long before it's all gone. It's just simple stuff, but people don't follow it, and that's why we need religion to give this kind of advice, back to basic kind of information. Diet. So Islam is talks about what's healthy for you and what's not. So eating pork is forbidding pork. It's just one of the things. It just says don't eat predators, which I don't think we normally eat, but some people do. I've heard, they eat snakes and bats and whatever. You can see that bats can cause certain problems, right? Like COVID. If you want to follow that theory, but it wouldn't be surprising if it was related. Yeah, and yeah, so for example, pig meat is known for carrying salmonella, especially because it's a uh, toxic flesh. Uh, yeah, it doesn't. Basically, the way it works is that because it has a short digestive system, it doesn't process all the bad stuff in the food. So we, take a lot of time to process the food, and it all comes out. And and cows have like four stomachs, and they process the food for like I don't know how long, like 2 days or something. But pigs, they have a very short digestive system, so not everything is fully processed and is just kept in the flesh, and then you eat that toxic flesh that's not fully processed, all the junk they might have eaten, and so it's really bad to eat the meat. That's all. Alcohol. So I talked about alcohol, really bad. So I know people who stopped drinking alcohol because they had so many problems in their family because of alcohol. So many people have come forward and said like alcohol is a super destructive disease, and it's well known amongst health professionals as probably the most dangerous uh, drug out there. Although you might say, oh, don't make such a drama about something so simple. It's just people who don't realize, or they don't realize how you can go into a dark place, or just don't value or don't care about all the suffering it causes. They're the ones who say it doesn't really matter. Let me quickly finish up. Loneliness. We all have families, pretty much. A lot of us do, but we don't really value them. If we keep good relationships with them, I know it's sometimes a bit difficult, but if we're patient enough, we reap the benefits in the long term, and always have fun, right? Don't undervalue the health that you have. Take time to enjoy yourself. Don't keep chasing stuff you don't have. Don't be a full-time materialist and making your life a misery. So now you can ask me anything you want. I do have a bunch of questions if you don't have any. Um, I'll ask them in a second. I mean, I'll copy paste them in the thingy in a second. Right, so let's get my questions. If you don't have any questions, feel free to, ask questions in the comments afterwards. I often get questions and all sorts of things. So I'm going to copy questions that I've been receiving from different people. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so in the comments on my videos, so here's one. Why does Islam allow slave women to be forced into sex? Quran chapter 33 verse 51. I'm not sure if I've answered this already, but I've actually forgotten if I should delete questions I've answered from my list. But you will find that these sort of claims are really unfounded. So that particular verse was nothing to do with sex slaves. It was just saying that it was actually saying kind of really the opposite. I don't know how these verses are kind of flipped upside down to have their meaning changed. Um, and so the verse in question, I suppose I could. I won't load it up; it'll mess things up. Was talking about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, offering these people who are already slaves through wars and things, and you might question why do you have slaves at all? We can talk about that if you want. Um, and I'll probably talk about it in a second. But he was offering those slave women, would you like to be my wife? Or, and he even said in this verse that if you're my wife, you won't have much money. Okay, because I live a very poor life. He used to sleep on the floor. He is known for sleeping really rough and hard. When he died, he only had like one date left in his house, right? Or he tempted them not to be his wives, um, by saying, "I'll give you loads of money for not being my wife." And a lot of people, a lot of those, or a lot, but he had 9 wives in total. A lot of them over 50, um, said, "Yes, we would like to still be your wife," even then, because they knew him by them and they liked his personality. So yeah, and there's a lot before that verse. I can't remember what else it says, but that's basically it, really. Um, what was I going to say? Why do you have slaves in the first place? So s- mostly Islam teaches how to get rid of slaves. To get rid of slaves, meaning like, if you get angry with them, then you have to free them, and you have to make them wear the same clothes as you. You have to feed them on your table. It's hardly anything like a slave, but the initial way people become slaves is a deterrent, because there were people who were attacking Muslims, and they would have killed and raped all the women and children and turned them into slaves. And so you have to say, listen, if you have a war with us, we're not going to just let you all free, because then they'll be saying, "Oh, keep attacking these Muslims all the time. They just let us go after every time we beat them." So there has to be some sort of deterrent, but that deterrent is kind of a weak deterrent, really. Um, yeah, because like even if you, a lot of the prisoners of war were just let off by saying, if they were to teach somebody something they knew, even if they were like killing Muslims, they were let off in history. So yeah, that's kind of an answer to that. Let's copy another question. So this is a question I got from actually a Muslim who I was sitting next to on a plane flight. So let's copy that. I don't know if I've answered this. Okay, anyway, how can it be how can it be fair if Islam is the one true religion and someone in the world has not heard of it, um, cannot benefit from it? So, not sure that makes sense. But what I'm saying, or what he was saying, was like, say Islam is the one true religion, then how can it be fair to people who have not heard of it and they can't benefit from it? Like, okay, you're saying Islam makes your life easier, makes you happier, and everything like that. How comes, why is it, you know, how can it be just of God not to allow everybody to equally hear of true Islam and not the false Islam and all this kind of stuff? And so God has a way of making things work. I find, for example, people who are living in the Amazon rainforest, they tend to seem to be quite happy. They do suffer from certain problems. So those are, I'm giving an example of people probably haven't really heard of Islam. And so they are judged, let's say, their challenges that God puts in front of them, because I don't think anything happens by mistake. So the challenges that they are faced with are of a limited nature. Their life is more simple and things like that. So God finds a way of making the life not too difficult, but they are probably, I wouldn't be surprised. It's not like God doesn't guide them at all just because they haven't heard of Islam. So they're probably, through, their, what do you call it, their conscience and stuff like that, told, hang on a minute, you should get out of the rainforest because things are going bad, and you should learn to, start learning stuff, explore the world. And if you stay too safe in your Amazon rainforest, things are going to get bad eventually. And I think that's what's happening. The Amazon rainforest is being destroyed. So I think there's a way of things working themselves out, basically. The world is a complex place. Um, yeah, suppose that's the best answer I can give for that now. It's quite hard to explain things in too much detail. I'm trying to think of that person who I was talking to and what I said to him. He thought my answers were fair enough. Um, yeah, it is complex. It can be a bit messy, but we don't know all the details of all the things that happen in people's minds. the challenges people are confronted with. As I say, everything that happens, I don't think there's a single mistake. There's only the what I like from a quote from my one of my favorite movies, V for Vendetta. He says, "There are no coincidences, only the illusion of a coincidence." So we we like to believe everything is just happened by accident and things like that. We like to believe that all our water is recycled and purified just by accident. That's the illusion or the humility of God, rather, to be so subtle as not to say, "Hey, look at me," God saying, "I'm moving the clouds and sorting everything out for you." No, it makes it all subtle. So we allow ourselves this illusion that God doesn't exist or God isn't aware or controlling things, but everything is being controlled by God. So I don't think there are any sort of accidental situations. If somebody hasn't heard of Islam, or at least the true version of Islam, they get to live life in a say more limited way. There are also people who live life in a more limited way, people who are not who do not fully grow up into adulthood, for example, or do not have full mental capabilities. They have a different sort of challenge. They develop a certain amount, and they will develop a different amount later on in the next life. This is not the end of life, as it were. This world, life on this world, is not the end. It's just the beginning of a process. So hopefully that explains something. I'll just delete that question so I don't ask myself that question again. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Here's another question. Um, I don't know if I've answered this one as well. Kind of vaguely feel like I have. Um, This is again kind of questions I'm getting on my videos. Why do women have to wear headscarves in Islam? Isn't that stopping them from being free? I'm quite sure I've answered this question before. So first of all, I always like to begin with that most of the converts to Islam in the West are women and they love wearing the headscarf. And why would they, of course, love to wear the headscarf? Why would it be in women's nature? Because women are a lot more self aware. They know they're the ones who, pluck their eyebrows to be in a certain shape and they have to comb their hair 100 times and all that kind of stuff. People like me barely comb their hair at all. I don't think my hair has touched a comb for I don't know how many years. But anyway, so yeah, men and women are completely different, and women are much more self-aware, and women are suffering at the moment because of, um, let's say, competition from airbrushed models. So I think you might know what airbrushed means. Um, or people who models who are not airbrushed but starving themselves, or probably both airbrushed and starving themselves, and all sorts of weird things. So they're under so much social pressure, and they naturally compete. It's in their nature. This is a sort of Islam is a sort of protection in that way, and women love that protection and simplifying their lives and things like that by not having to do their hair, put on some special hair cream so that this is the kind of things I hear. Put on some hair cream that they have to put on 3 hours uh, early in the morning before they leave, so it curls up or something weird like that. Just put on a headscarf. Life becomes so much more simple, so much more relaxed, so much healthier for you. There are enough things to worry about than worrying about, your hair. So, and of course, when women go out and they kind of show off, and it's in their nature to show off, okay, um, then they start attracting people with the wrong intentions, and they sometimes like that attention, and one thing leads to another, and then families are destroyed. And this is not an exaggeration. This has been playing. This is playing out every single day in the West. So that's why families are just broken by default almost in the West. I'm a private tutor. It's very rare for me to go to, let's say, a typical Western household and for it to be not a broken home. That's what I find. Okay, it's very rare, or all sorts of issues. Let's say. Again, I'm not being negative to I'm not being purposely just negative for no reason. I'm just saying this is how things are. There are statistics to go behind what I'm saying. And so I see um, Londoners where I'm from and just people in the West generally is my people, and I think I owe it to them if I know something that will help their lives, and I see so many people converting to Islam and see it helping their lives, so I owe it to my people, as it were, that I do shows like this and explain, and hopefully somebody benefits from it. Okay, so that's one question. Um, Yeah, before I forget, if you got any comments or suggestions for improvement, like Salim did, please do send them to me. I think next week what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this sort of timer for each question, so you know how long I'm going to spend on each question, and then I'll have kind of chapters in the video as well. So what did I just copy? That one. Let's delete the stuff before that. I'll delete this one. We've done that one. Why does God not immediately answer my prayers? So I watched an interesting video this morning from a young convert, 19-year-old convert to Islam, and she was talking about how she was praying to God for certain things. She wanted a certain job and or a job to get independence from her mother who was persecuting her for being a Muslim. She was a Catholic Latino, however you describe it. Anyway, she wanted a God and she wanted to meet some Muslims for some sort of support. And for 4 months, she did not get a response. And she was really angry at God. And so when she got really angry and she gave up, just at that time, in one go, um, she got a call saying, "Come down for a job," and the job was a much higher position than she expected. Like she was really surprised that she was not even qualified for it, as she thought. And in that same job, there were, I think, three Muslim women who really helped and supported her, explained things about Islam to her and stuff like that. So in one day, she got everything. That's how she describes it. And she was really sorry uh, that she even doubted God, right? So, and she explained her in herself from her own experience and how she felt about this sort of episode of you know, God not immediately listening to her prayers, she said, well, God tests the people that he loves, right? So why would God test the people he loves? You have to look at the nature of the world, the nature of our soul, and what makes us happy. So I'm not a big fan of somebody called Tony Robinson, but he did say he has given off a bit of wisdom here and there, and he said, Robinson, famous self-help guru. Um, he says, progress is happiness. I think he said something like that. Okay, so we need to progress, and we don't necessarily progress ourselves all by ourselves. Okay, so we need um, pushes and shoves by God. So God puts us in those situations. God, if He wanted to, um, would could just leave us alone. And God often says that if I love somebody, I test them, but if I lose sort of if I'm careless about them, I can't remember the exact word, I let them to their own devices. So when you are challenged, you actually develop and you become a much more beautiful person, like a butterfly. You transform into something new through those challenges. And those challenges are not random challenges. God says in the Quran, there's uh, no soul is challenged beyond its capacity. Okay, so these challenges are tailor made for you. And so God doesn't, if God answered your prayers immediately and solved all your problems immediately, there wouldn't be any challenge left. And so it's the question of listen, like, I exist, and there's so much evidence already, and you've probably been given some evidence already. Now you're going to go through a little bit of a challenge, okay? And we're going to see and test your ego. Your ego will tell you, oh, God hasn't listened to me this time. while I threw a tantrum and whatever. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna quit believing in God. Like when you know that God definitely exists. So it's a test of your ego, test of your patience. There is no religion or faith without patience. Patience is an absolute key element to um, any any progress in your life, including through your soul development. So if you don't have patience, you can't you know pass any exams. I'm a teacher. There's no way you can be patient. You no way you can pass a math test without being patient. You have to study day after day for so many years, and then you pass the test. The same with religion. You shouldn't think of it in any sort of exception. Why should it be different? God lays out the laws of the universe don't that that basically don't change. They apply to what we call worldly ambitions as well as spiritual ambitions. They all take patience. You don't just get you don't say I want something and flick your finger and that's the end of it. So that's a brief answer to that. Please, ask any questions you want. Um, let's see. Let's get rid of that question. No. Let's get rid of that one. Did it in the wrong order. Actually, I said, why does God allow good people to suffer? I kind of feel like I answered that question in the last question. Who is God? That's an interesting one. I'm gonna cut it this time. That'll save me deleting it afterwards. Okay, who is God? So this is an interesting question. I was explaining to sometimes I overlook what these kind of very basic questions, but I was explaining it to somebody recently who is suffering from a lot of depression, and he said, like, who? The conversation was like, oh, which God are you talking about? Whether then I said to him, there's only one God, the God of all these different religions. God has always been the source of all these religions. It doesn't make sense to believe in a God who, a racist God, let's say, who only preached to the Jews or whatever, like the Bible does. Um, some people claim that the Bible teaches is for more than the Jews. The Jews call the non-Jews Gentiles, right? And Jesus himself says, "I'm not here to uh, preach to anybody except the Jews." He said, "I don't even." He even almost likened non-Jews to dogs. See, that's in the Bible. It's not hidden anywhere. You can check it up on Google very easily. Hello, DJXJS. Nice to have you here. Okay, so I think this is a person who was, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, so this is a really important topic. How can you um, believe in something if you don't fully know what it is? So who is God? God is the um, well, in the Quran it simplifies, aka David. Nice one, David. Cool, nice to have you here. Thanks, appreciate you joining us. Ask any questions you want if you like. I'm just asking. That's cool. You can come anytime. You're the first person to make a comment on my not all that popular show, but I still enjoy doing it anyway. um, I think people will watch it afterwards. It's quite hard to ask questions on the show, so no pressure, David. But appreciate you being here, and if you can think of some questions, that'd be great. Anything you want. I don't mind if it's kind of surprising or maybe sounding annoying or something. You know me. I don't get annoyed really. Um, so, yeah, who is God? The Quran describes God in four kind of key attributes. First of all, he is one, and that makes sense because if there was any more than one God, there would be conflict in the laws of the universe. So, if you look at all the great scientists like Einstein, Stephen Hawking, and things like that, they're all basically have this understanding that there is so much coordination in the laws of the universe, that there must be or only one law that creates all the other laws. So there's this understanding that there's only one source of all the laws. And so if you believe in God, which again is scientifically the most reasonable thing, again we can talk about that as well. People like Einstein, things like that, have talked about this kind of thing. There must be only one God. If there's only one source of all the laws, because they're all working together so nicely, there's so much unity and coordination and things like that, then there must be only one God. So that's the first thing the Quran says in one particular very short chapter, which only have about 4 verses. So the first verse is, there's only one God. And then the second thing is everything comes from God. Okay, so you don't have to pray to anything else. Absolutely everything comes from God. He's the source of everything. And then God doesn't have children and is not the child of anything. Basically, he's the beginning, the of everything. He's not the result of anything. He's the ultimate beginning. So people often say, um, if you believe in God, there might have been a God before that God who created that God. And God is saying in the Quran here, nope, I am the ultimate beginning. And naturally, and this is not against logic, it's not just about belief. I've already said that the first thing that the Quran says about God goes along with science and logic. Okay, so this idea of God saying he is the first thing, again, according to our logic, there must be something that was the beginning. That's according to basic, human understanding. There must have been a beginning, and that beginning, God is saying, is him. Um, and then finally, to remove any doubt after all these three basic qualities, um, there is absolutely the fourth verse of the Quran says, or this particular chapter says, there is nothing comparable to him, to God. And when I say him, it doesn't mean he's a he, it's rather disrespectful to say it. And so the Quran talks about God in two different ways. When it does suggest that we should use the word him when referring to him rather than saying it or her, but that doesn't mean that uh, God doesn't have feminine qualities. In fact, the main qualities of God in the beginning of the Quran, in the first verse of the Quran, are feminine qualities, and that is the quality of being a womb as in like where babies are kept. So it's God is saying, I am like a mother to you, and I'm a caretaker of you. Take caretaker of you. So you are a helpless being within my universe, and I feed you and I give you all the things you need. That's what God describes himself as. So the first verse of the Holy Quran is, "In the name of God," or "I begin with the name of God," or with the help of God, who is the most gracious and merciful. Now, Arabic is extremely deep, and that's why it's used to express the words of God. So these words, simply translated as gracious and merciful, don't do it justice at all. Actually, how much time have I got left? Okay, yeah. Um, those two words actually are Rahman and Rahim, okay, the Arabic words Rahman, Rahim, and they both come from another word, Rehem, which means the womb. So Arabic is a very mathematical language, very logical language, not like English, for example, which comes from all sorts of other languages like French and Latin, whatever, and kind of don't really follow exact rules. They have some rules, but because they're so messed up from different things, yeah. So anyway, that's God introduced. Let me. How do you know God exists? Suppose I'll do that one. I'm doing them in order, I suppose. So last few minutes we'll do how do we know God exists? So this is another thing that there are so many people who haven't really thought about whether God exists or not. Um, And also, they've been put under the impression that it's scientific not to believe in God, and that's due to a lot of propaganda. and a lack of research on the people who have just not thought about it. So people like Einstein believed in God, and some atheists love to say that he didn't believe in God, but he was famous for saying God does not play dice with the universe and things like that, you know. Um, and it's just, even logically, if you were to think about it yourself, I often explain that to even have, so you've got blood in your body, that blood has these blood cells. In blood cells, they have lots of hemoglobin. To even have get one bit of hemoglobin should have taken longer than the age of the universe to be created. Okay, so never mind even one human being being created by some sort of random millions and millions and millions and I say millions, like that is, you can't even say the number. There's too many zeros. Millions is 6 zeros, and the probability of a single hemoglobin, I think enzyme, I can't remember what, I always forget what it is, to be created is 1/130 or something. So like 130 zeros instead of just 6 zeros. It's just a ridiculous amount. And the number of atoms, just to give you an idea of size, there are only 10 to 1 with 50 zeros. That's a tiny fraction of the probability, or the, 50 zeros is the number of atoms in the universe. So that's much smaller than the probability, or 1 over the probability of the universe, no, just one hemoglobin being made by accident. Never mind a whole. So basically, it's impossible. Okay, but you're not told that because famous atheists like Richard Dawkins pretend that the probabilities aren't like that. And so, it's your fault if you don't think about these really important things. So, simple probabilities, simple maths, science, and stuff will tell you that God does exist. Anyway, thank you for watching. Even if you're not watching right now, thank you, David, for joining me. I appreciate that. Um, if you watch it later on, and I thank you for that as well. Please do share these videos if you find them useful. If you've got any comments or suggestions for improvement, please do tell me. Please like it at the very least. That way, the video gets promoted to other people. Other people get to watch it and benefit from it, because I make no money from doing this kind of thing. I know this stuff will make lives better. And yeah, and subscribe. That probably helps our YouTube algorithm tell other people about it as well. So please do at least like the video, and hopefully I'll catch you next week. Thank you. Bye.